Hey guys, it's Mike from Sepulpa Times, and I am here with Leslie Clingenpeel from the Spring Shelter. She is the CEO of this organization, and just to kind of give you guys an update or kind of start the conversation here, Sepulpa Times is doing a lot of conversation, a lot of talking to people, different organizations who are basically dealing with victims and those who are involved with human trafficking and domestic violence in Oklahoma. And so Leslie was one of the first ones to reach out to us about that. And we're really excited to have her here on the show. She is the CEO of the Spring Shelter. And Leslie, thanks for coming to be on the show today. I appreciate this.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I'm a local Sapulpa resident and have a Sapulpa ping ping and kids in the community and work in the Sand Springs area. So I'm excited to be talking to just my neighbors and community friends about this. So thanks for having us on here.
Yeah, me too. Super thrilled to be here. Glad to have you here. Really glad, especially to have like another Sapulpa native, I guess, sort of here. And
Yeah.
so it's great that we kind of get to have this conversation. I want to start by asking. So I'm understanding that we've got some misconceptions about human trafficking out there. Some misunderstandings from people who might be not really fully understanding how it's being dealt with here in Oklahoma. And so please take a minute and introduce people to yourself and the Spring Shelter and what it is that you do for folks.
Yeah, yes, there are a lot of misconceptions. A big part of my job is education and awareness around just myths, misconceptions, but also what is actually happening here in Oklahoma regarding domestic violence and human trafficking. And so, yes, I am the CEO of The Spring. My name is Leslie Clingenpeel. The Spring is one of the four certified agencies here in the state of Oklahoma that's certified through the Oklahoma Attorney General's office to provide services to victims of human trafficking, domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking. And here at the Spring, we also serve children. So if they're coming in with their adult or their parent who has been victimized, we do serve children as well. So in fact, over the last 3 years, over 50% of the people we have served has been what we call secondary victims or children who are coming in with their parent who's being sexually or domestically abused. And so I also serve as the co-chair, the leadership co-chair for the Oklahoma Coalition Against Human Trafficking. And I'm an appointed commissioner for the Oklahoma Commission on the Status of Women and have served for several years on their anti-human trafficking committee. So going around the state of Oklahoma, bringing education and awareness, but also bringing policy and legislation recommendations and information to our state legislators so that something can be done about it at the state level. But here at the Spring, my primary job is we are, again, a victim service provider. We have several different programs that we provide to victims of domestic violence and human trafficking. One of them is our emergency crisis shelter. So we're receiving people, victims straight out of their emergency situation, oftentimes a highly lethal situation. So if we didn't intervene, they could result in homicide or murder. We also have a transitional living program. So that's someone who's past that emergency crisis shelter point, but still isn't ready to fully be on their own. They can stay in our transitional living program. We also have a non-residential program. So that's people who have a safe place to stay. Maybe they have a safe support system, a family member they can stay with, but they need all of the rest of our wraparound services like legal aid services, mental health counseling, healthy relationship groups, psychoeducational groups, substance use, disorder help. They can engage in that through a non-residential program. But also one of the things that we've really pioneered here at the Spring is what we call a field response team. So we are working very, very closely with our law enforcement agencies here in the state of Oklahoma, the Tulsa Police Department Human Trafficking Vice Unit, the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics Human Trafficking Unit, and Oklahoma City Vice Human Trafficking Unit to go out and have victim service providers, victim advocates in the field with law enforcement as they are encountering those victims who are being recovered from a human trafficking situation. So that's a pretty unique approach. We've kind of pioneered it here, but we've seen really great success with getting victims to services, get them to safety that they need to be at, but also having them have a really good collaborative relationship with law enforcement to bring justice to their perpetrators and their traffickers, right? And so we use the word recovered. I'm going to stop talking for a second because I know you have questions, but I really key in on that word recovery because one of the misconceptions, or one of the things that has kind of been glamorized in the anti-human trafficking movement, is the word rescue, right? We're going out and we're busting down doors and we're rescuing these victims. We don't use the word rescue. We believe that those victims have autonomy, and I'm not their savior and I'm not rescuing them. I'm out with law enforcement to help recover them out of a situation and then provide them and connect them to services that they are choosing to engage in, that they are choosing to walk down the path of, right? So the work we do with law enforcement isn't the busting down doors, dragging women and children out of some unsafe situation. It's truly meeting them where they are in a safe way and introducing them to people who know how to help them navigate the complexities of their situation as they're trying to get out of it.
Okay. Now I understand that every situation is different for every person here, and I know that there are also a lot of common things that people tend to look for in these types of situations when you're on your side of it, where you're trying to help someone out. But in your experience, can you give me an idea of what a typical situation might look like for the spring in terms of maybe you guys meeting with someone where they are and then bringing them into the spring, or getting them the help that they need and where whatever situation they're involved in.
Sure. Yeah. So we're going to take the stance that we're relying on our law enforcement partners who are trained and knowledgeable to
Okay.
let us know when to be out with them. Right. So we are not in our own advocacy, right, going out as a team and walking into unsafe, potentially unsafe situations, both for ourselves, but us intervening also creates a level um, of danger for the victims as someone is trying to intervene into that situation, right? So we're relying on our highly trained human trafficking law enforcement providers to let us know when we need to intervene. That would also be us leaning into our trained DHS human trafficking workers who are intervening in a child care situation. We are going to respond once they've determined we're needed to do that, right? We're not going to go out and seek out spaces that we're going into ourselves. But I also just want to touch on, it's not this glamorized somebody's been kidnapped and now we're going out trying to find a missing person, right? Are there missing people in human trafficking? Sure, they're people that's been isolated from their family, they've been coerced into the commercial sex industry. But we also see a lot of um, unfortunately what we call interfamilial trafficking, right? So those children, those people are being trafficked in their own homes. They're not being kidnapped and taken somewhere from the Hobby Lobby. They're being trafficked in their own homes by someone that they know and that they love, right? So that could look like um, the child that's being sold to the parent's drug dealer in exchange for to meet their drug habit, or a wife who's being forced by her husband to have sex with the landlord to pay the rent or to cover the rent or to meet basic needs, right? So we're not going out and searching necessarily for these homes. We're partnering with agencies who are intervening, and we're bringing the awareness and the training to identify when this is happening, when there is exploitation happening, when there is coercion happening, and then we're responding accordingly to again help them navigate the complexity of the needs that they're going to have once they get taken out of that situation.
Okay. Okay. Really good. Thank you for that clarification, though. So you guys are not actively looking for situations to insert yourself in on necessarily. You guys are more relying on the information that's already been put out there or being given to you by law enforcement agencies and things like that, right? Is that a pretty good understanding?
Yes, and we do work. We don't just sit around and wait for someone to know what they're doing and call us, right? We do a lot of education, awareness training to our law enforcement partners, to our counselors, to our DHS workers, because we are the subject matter expert on human trafficking.
Hmm.
But we want to partner with them and we want to respect their scope of services, right? This is a multi sector. Um, Collaborative response that we have to create. So advocates aren't the only answer, right? We know we need law enforcement, we know we need DHS workers, we know we need counselors, and we all have to work through this together. So to your point, we're out there educating, training, locking arms, but we're not out in our own space trying to meet all of those needs. We're not DHS workers, right? We don't need to go in acting as such. We're not law enforcement trained to walk into a situation and intervene and pull a victim out. We're working in collaboration with those who are trained to do that and assisting them so that victims can have a good experience across the board and really have all of their needs met.
Okay, good deal. Okay, you brought up a term that I'd never heard before, and I think we need to talk just a little bit more about it. You called it what'd you call it again? What was it?
Interfamilial trafficking.
Intrafamilial. And so what that sounds like is basically human trafficking that's going on within the same family, like someone
Correct.
who is trafficking out their wife or their daughter or maybe a further down the line relative or something. I'm really
Yes.
curious. Do you guys have any data on how much human trafficking is intrafamilial versus how much of it is outside extrafamilial, whatever the term would be there?
Yeah, yeah. So that is we have some data, and I like to preface that with some. Human trafficking has only been against the law in our nation for 25 years, and only in our state for a little over 12-ish years. So our data is very skewed and very low because most people don't know how to identify it, right? We're looking for the wrong thing. We're looking for the taken scenario, somebody's getting thrown in a white van. We're looking for those things. There are some studies that have come out, and about 70% of, I'm gonna go with this stat first, and then I'll wrap us back around. About 70% of the people that would report that their trafficker is someone they knew is 70%, right? So if everyone who says um, this was someone I knew versus I got kidnapped is 70%, we know that that 30% is not, actually about 10% is going to be a stranger. But within that 70, really it's 70 to 80-ish percent, um, about half of them is someone within a family, right? Half of them is a familial type trafficking situation. That may not be direct family, that may be a foster care family, right? It's somebody that's in a caregiver or a familial type situation. The other part of those are going to be someone that they knew that they became in a relationship with. So a romantic partner, right? That then coerced them into this wonderful relationship and then later force them into the sex trade. So to wrap it all back around, the majority of people that are trafficking people are people that they know and they're in a trusted relationship with, is not a stranger. And of familial trafficking situations, we have a study that came out of California, and they did one in Texas as well, just to see if the data matched up, and it is tracking. So a state very close to us. Of the people who are the family members who are trafficking their children, about 72% of them are the biological mother trafficking the child. Hard data to digest. We would say that to be true in Oklahoma, though we don't have real hard data on that. It's all anecdotal based on our experience. Um, Biological mothers trafficking their children, and we're seeing it here in the state of Oklahoma.
Could you say that last sentence again? Because I think you cut out right as you were saying it.
Yeah, I was going to say biological mothers trafficking their children here in the state of Oklahoma, or a foster care situation and children being exploited by their foster care families, is happening here in the state of Oklahoma.
Wow. Okay. That's yeah, that's tough news to hear, just like you said. And I think human trafficking on the whole is bad enough. It's easier to I don't know how to say this well, but I mean, it's easier to swallow when you think that it's a stranger abducting a child or something. But to hear that it's someone on their own family that's actually doing this to them, then I think that makes it even, more egregious, I should say. Um, so I do know, like you mentioned earlier, that like there's a scenario where it's a romantic partner that kind of gets involved and then um, eventually leads them down this particular path. And then earlier we were saying, I'm kind of thinking about like some of the warning signs and stuff to be looking for. And we were talking earlier, there's some data, some pretty heavy data on domestic violence in Oklahoma and stuff. Can you kind of shed some light on what that looks like for folks?
Yeah, so just circling back real quick, and then I will definitely jump into the domestic violence. Some of the warning signs and some of the reasons why I think, yes, it is an egregious unthinkable crime that a mother is trafficking her child or a family member is trafficking their child, right? But I think that I just want to highlight the importance of understanding the crime and what it actually looks like here in the state of Oklahoma, and surrounding areas, is because this just highlights that we're not looking for it, right? A mother might come in and bring her child into the ER, or into the counselor's office or something, and this child's complaining of chronic stomach aches. Our number one inclination is not to think this mother is the trafficker, right? When we think of traffickers, we think of, to your point, strangers, usually male. People think it's male. And this is why we want to educate and say it can 100% be a caregiver, and a female caregiver at that. And the more we know the warning signs, and the more we know things that we need to kind of look for, and the more educated we are on what is actually happening in our state, the easier we can to identify. So that's just a soapbox, and this is why I think it's important for accurate information to get out about what human trafficking is and is not, and how we know to look for it. But on the domestic violence side, unfortunately, sure all of us here in Oklahoma are no stranger to Oklahoma being number one in the news and a lot of things. Unfortunately, we are number one in the nation, for occurrences of domestic violence, and we're number two in the nation for women being killed by their intimate partner, or their domestic, in a domestic violence situation. So it's happening. Our domestic violence fatality review board publishes a report every single year, and last year, we had the highest occurrence of females being murdered by their intimate partners than we've ever had in our state. A lot of what the OSBI, the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, is now calling um, family annihilations. So we've seen it, right? It's not just a woman being killed by her partner, it is an abuser killing the partner, the children, and themselves all in one fell swoop. So that's happening. It's happening. We definitely saw an increase in the severity of domestic violence incidences after COVID. I could give my thought on why that's happening, but again, we're still early on in the data, so it'd all be anecdotal at that point. But it's happening in our state. Um, I am thankful to say that our state leaders and legislators and service providers like the Spring are taking it very seriously and putting a lot of effort and resources, and intentionality behind creating legislation, putting resources into victim services, and all of those things. But we have an uphill battle, and we're number one in the nation for domestic violence.
Yeah, not exactly something to be proud of, really.
Right.
But really, what that does is it definitely highlights the need for people to be more aware. Just like you said, it's not our first thought, and nobody wants it to be the first thought that you're thinking of a mom trafficking out their daughter or something. But I guess, we got to be first place for a reason. So maybe we need to start paying attention to things. So I know I don't have you for very much longer. I did want to take a moment, unless you have any other big ideas that you wanted to go through before we end it. But I did want to take a moment. Go ahead and talk about anything else you want to make sure that people know, and then let us know how to reach out to the Spring for those folks who might be going through domestic violence or human trafficking.
Yes, so I appreciate the opportunity to speak into that. One big idea that I would say is I would go back to say, we're not saying that every time a child has a stomach ache, they're being trafficked by their parent, right? We're not saying that, but we are
Of
saying
course.
we want people to have a real understanding of what trafficking does and can look like. And if you suspect something, we would highly, highly ask that you do not try to intervene yourself, right? Do not try to step in and be something that you're not trained to be, but definitely report, right? If you see something, say something, is what we like to say. There is a statewide human trafficking hotline, there is a national human trafficking hotline. But also, you can always call the Spring. We have a 24/7 hotline, that can be reached out if you are experiencing human trafficking. If you think someone's experiencing human trafficking, we can take those calls. We can make sure that those get to our law enforcement partners. We can help you navigate that situation, and help you not navigate it if that's the appropriate response, right? So our 24-hour a day hotline number is 918-245-4075. Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics also has a hotline, and I should know that number by heart, but I'm looking that up. I just have a direct line with them, so I'm looking that number up. But we say all that to say, please don't feel like everything you see is not human trafficking, right? But it is happening and we want you to be aware, and we would rather you report than you not report. So that would be the highlight that I would want to give. Um, you go ahead and ask me another question while I find this hotline number. I should 100% know the state hotline number by heart, but I usually just text my agent over the human trafficking unit.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about the fact that the spring is celebrating 45 years of being around now, right? Isn't that right?
Yes, yes, that is right. I'm going to give this hotline number really quick. It is
Okay.
855-617-2288, and that will go straight to our team at the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics, who has a dedicated human trafficking hotline and has a dedicated unit of investigators. Um,
Okay.
so, yes, 45 years. Sounds crazy. We always say that we're the best kept secret around here because when we say that we've been around for 45 years, people are like, we've never even heard of you guys. We are a secure, confidential location on purpose because of the nature of what we do, but we really want people to know that we're here. For 45 years, we've been, working in the state, both for domestic violence and human trafficking. We were the first ever certified human trafficking agency in the state of Oklahoma back in 2012. So we've been working with human trafficking clients for 13 years now, and working with our law enforcement partners in that regard. So, yes, 45 years. It
Wow,
precedes me.
congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, for those of you who are wondering, if you didn't catch that phone number, we're going to be sure to put that in the description of the video. So be sure to check that out. We'll also include a link over to the Springs website. And
Yep.
Leslie, I just want to re-extend my gratitude. Thanks for being a part of this today. I think the work that you guys are doing is fantastic. And I wish you a lot of success in the sense that one day I hope you're not needed.
Agreed. I think this is one of the unique times where I say I want to work myself out of a job and I hope we're not needed. Um, so yeah, I appreciate that. And I just want to encourage our Sapulpa friends and, our friends around the area of there are victim service providers right in our backyard, right? Divis is right there in Creek County. I know that they have an office there. We are up the highway in Sand Springs, but can serve anyone, in that area. And so, I want everyone to leave encouraged, knowing that there are people who know what we're doing and who are dedicated to this cause and to creating communities free of abuse. And if you need any, if you're, I want to offer this. If you're an employer and you think you need some training on domestic violence and how you respond to an employee experiencing that, if you're a school counselor, school board, anybody that you think your staff needs some training, your faculty needs some training, we do that. We love to do that. We love to make sure you feel equipped. But if you find yourself in a situation and you don't know how to respond, we're here for you, and that's our job, and we want to help with that. So, just saying that to all of our community partners out there. Um, Human trafficking and domestic violence transcends any kind of social class, any kind of race, ethnicity, religion. It's everywhere. So don't think you're immune and don't think that you're alone. We want to help.
Wow. Okay. That sounds like a great place to end it. Thank you again, Leslie, for being here on the Sapulpa Times. Guys, stay tuned. We're going to continue to bring you the stories from different organizations involved in this fight against human trafficking. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys next time on Sapulpa Times. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Thanks, Micah.
Yeah. Let me.